Ezra Levant here. I'm standing at the Golan Heights. Behind me is the Syrian town of Quneitra. And there's Al Nusra terrorists and others there. A moment ago, we heard some gunfire, probably about 10 miles that way. You can't hear it now, but I'm going to guess we heard about 40 rounds being shot. Who knows? We've been here in Israel for a few days. I'm here with my colleagues, Faith Goldie, Gavin McInnes, Sheila Gunn Reid, and some support team. And I've let my friends do most of the observing and talking because I've been to Israel several times before. For my friends, it was the first time, and I sort of really enjoyed seeing Israel with fresh eyes through them, and I enjoyed their conversations. As I thought, Israel's security fence, which is a fence in 95% of its length, a wall in only 5%, as I thought that would be very interesting to them, especially given Donald Trump's emphasis on a fence or a wall. It was interesting to see their reaction to the word settlement. We went to a number of Jewish settlements in the West Bank, which they say, what's a settlement? These are suburbs. These are houses. These are towns. These are subdivisions. But we also talked to a lot of political leaders and pundits. And let me tell you what's new to me, because I share the views of my friends on security. I'm right-wing, obviously. I support Israel, not just because of my ethnic and religious background, but because it's the only liberal democracy in the area. And when you're standing here and looking down at terrorists and you're hearing gunfire, you realize it's not just the only democracy, it's the only stable place in this region. I mean, the Arab Spring has turned into a scorching fire that's not only burnt the whole area, but it has sent millions of people fleeing either as genuine refugees or as economic opportunists or as terrorists into Europe. Behind me lies Syria with what? 500,000 casualties over the last 4 or 5 years of the civil war. Compare that number itself and the 2 or 3 million Muslim migrants that have come from Syria and Libya and from Africa and all over the Muslim world streaming into Europe. What's that number? 500,000 dead Syrians, 2-3 million Muslims migrating in the Million Muslim March into Europe. That is a crisis of enormous proportion. And compare that. The one thing I've learned on this trip so far that I didn't know before is that in the past century of Arab-Israeli conflict and terrorism, so all the, 5 or 6 wars, all the terrorism combined, the grand total casualties in the Arab-Israeli conflict is not quite 100,000. Now, those are 100,000 tragedies, and for a country as small as Israel, it's an enormous burden. But when you compare a century of conflict, 100,000 casualties, to 100,000 deaths a year in Syria alone, let alone the fires blazing through northern Africa and what's yet to come in Iran, you realize how minuscule an issue it is. And for the last few days, we've heard Israelis, even conservative right-wing Likudniks, who are these right-wing warmongers, agonizing over, well, should we be more moral? Should the fence be a few meters this way or that way? And what about this poor shepherd whose land is cut? You see this agonizing over this minutia and Area A and Area B and Area C and the maps. And Donald Trump himself, who says solving the Arab-Israeli crisis will be the art of the deal of all time. You know what? It is not. This is not an important conflict in the world. You would think it is. Measured by the amount of news coverage, by the amount of airtime, the amount of column inches in newspapers, you would think, geographically speaking, population-wise, that Israel was the largest country in the world, both by people and land. By the amount of coverage is, I don't think there's a country in the world that has proportionately more journalists than this place has. That I certainly know there's not a country in the world that has more diplomacy and NGOs and lawyers and hagglers and busybodies and scammers and priest processes and refugees who 70 years later still call themselves refugees. There is no other place in the world that is as processed and litigated as Israel, and yet it is a sliver in the world on its own terms, let alone the crises of the past decade. So what I've taken away here, in addition to the observations of my friends that I share, is that there is no Arab-Israeli crisis. Yeah, it's a problem, but Israel's managed to tamp it down. If they don't have peace, well, at least they have some quiet, that gunfire in the background notwithstanding. Stay with us over this week while we share with you more observations. I'm enjoying seeing Israel for the first time through the eyes of my friends Gavin, Sheila, and Faith. But for myself, my conclusion is Donald Trump should stop wasting his time, as should the European Union and all others. They have their own crisis to face, and they have their own terrorist problems. They should do as well in solving them as Israel has. For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant. Ezra Levant here for the Rebel.media. We're in Israel for the week, and we're putting all our videos up at rebelisrael.com. Go check it out, watch the videos, and if you want to help us crowdfund our costs, we'd be grateful, and you can do it there too.